All right, Big 12 fans, you should love me by now. I've been killing Big 12 Media Days this week. We've been specifically going to teams: Oklahoma, West Virginia, Oklahoma State, Texas, TCU, on down the line. We're going Big 12 overall right now with Gracie Terrell from Sprott's Takes. Gracie, how you doing today?
Doing great. Always fun to talk about football finally.
Oh, man. I keep thinking about this, and I bring it up when we talk about the long off season. It is the longest, and I know you love all sports. You love a ton of sports, but this is the one that is just the longest. Championship game in early January. We got to wait all the way to September, and so we just got to keep talking and hoping and wishing and waiting and counting down.
Exactly. And we've been doing a countdown on bringonthecats.com with old K-State players and current K-State players, just kind of profiling them just to, kind of start talking about football. I think we started out at 100 days out, so it's been a lot of fun.
Hey, Gracie, before we dig in here, let people know where they can find you because you're all over the place, got a number of things going on.
Yeah, bringonthecats.com. I talk about K-State for the most part, and sprotstakes.com is where you can find all my other Kansas City area sports for the most part. So I focus on the Chiefs, Royals, K-State, Kansas City area college football. So that's my main focus, but I get going on a lot of national topics too, if you let me.
So I'll leave those Royals alone because it's been a rough dive here in the last few years after that
Yeah.
nice back-to-back to the trips to the World Series. But I got to ask you, Alex Smith conversion now to Kirk Cousins. No, Kirk Cousins went to Minnesota.
Yep.
Pat Mahomes, my bad. Pat Mahomes, obviously, the Big 12 guy. We're talking to Big 12 people right now, taking over. How are people taking that? Are they optimistic?
Oh, I mean, the hype around this kid is surreal. Having never seen the Chiefs drafted a quarterback, I was not alive when they got Todd Blackledge. Thankfully, I didn't have to watch that. But Mahomes is the real deal to so many people in Kansas City. And going from Alex Smith, who had absolutely zero out of pocket presence, you look at the Texas Tech highlights, and luckily I got to see him playing at Texas Tech quite a bit when he was there. He's an incredible kid. So the media is all about it. The fans are all about it. There's a couple people on the fence just given his inexperience, but what he showed against Denver last season when he did make his debut was pretty impressive.
All right, we got Gracie Terrell on the line from Sprott's Takes. Please join her right there. Just go to at GAT.
Yep.
That's
I
all
will
you
pop
need to
up.
know. And then you can find her from there on all the good stuff that she does with Big 12 oriented, Kansas State stuff right there. And when I say Kansas, that's not blasphemy. That is just meaning in the state of Kansas. She is a
Yes.
Kansas State girl. All right, let's start there. I ranked the coaches in every Power 5 conference, Gracie. I got to the Big 12, and I really wanted to keep it current, meaning if there was a Bobby Bowden kind of guy or a Joe Paterno at the end of the line, okay, he's an all-time top 5, top 10 coach, but not right this second. I'm going to rank these guys right this second, but it's hard for me not to say that Bill Snyder, given the talent that he has on the field or lack thereof in certain spots, is not doing just about as good a job as anybody in that conference.
Not too bad for his age, I would say. And he doesn't show any signs of slowing down. The one thing I will say about Bill is that he shows his elderly side a little bit when he gets into these press conferences, and they know his style. It's 3 questions. Usually he'll go on for the entire time about each question. He'll get to the bottom of it, kind of talk about how he doesn't like the new rules, but instant gratification, he kind of went off about that. I mean, the guy is a classic college football Hall of Fame coach. We respect him. It'd be fun to see him switch it up a little bit. He said that at one point that he was going to say something personally that a lot of coaches wouldn't say about the transfer rule. And he kind of got a little bit more candid there. But the guy has shown no signs of slowing down. Cancer will not get him. His age won't get him. And he's truly incredibly passionate still about this game.
So for Big 12 media, who is the one coach that everybody waits to hit the podium because there's a chance, even though these guys generally like to keep it well buttoned up and start out the season in a good place and play a conservative and get out of town with no controversy? Who would be the one guy that may let a few slip that you can have a little fun with?
Oh, Mike Gundy, easily.
Okay.
That guy's a character.
Anything out of Gundy this year?
Really, it was pretty tame. I was expecting a little bit more pizzazz from the guy, but him just showing up and having a pretty positive attitude. I think everyone's just excited about having football start up again, and he seemed to be really in his element. And looking forward to the start of the season to prove that his words can be backed up by his actions. And I think that's what a lot of people noticed about Tom Herman, is that he just came out just way too strong and way too optimistic about everything. I mean, we all know how Texas can be, and it's a lot of pressure for the fan base that they put on the coaches and really any personnel there at Texas. But he was just coming out like way too strong. So I kind of thought Gundy was going to be like that and maybe just be like, "This is what we have. This is what we're going to do this year, and no more questions." Bye. I was kind of expecting that, or maybe like a wrestling onesie. You never know. But Tom Herman really took the cake of overly aggressive this year.
So Mike Gundy obviously has the classic rant of Big 12 football going back about 10 years ago, because he's basically a man at this point, but he is 50.
Yes. Will we get a 50? I'm a man. I'm 50 rant. I don't know. I'm looking forward
And
to
then
it.
I don't know at what point he makes the transition to I'm an old man. Maybe that comes at 60, maybe not 50. Not nowadays. I think 50 is still pretty acceptable. Just keeping it in the mid-range, middle age factor there. But for those people that are just filtering onto the live chat right now, we got Gracie Terrell on the line from Sprott's Takes. You got to join her at, just go to Twitter and go to @GAT, and you can catch all of her good work right there as she gets us set for football season on the NFL and the collegiate levels. We're talking of the Big 12 Media Days, which she was tracking from gun to gun, or Gundy to Gundy, maybe something like that. So, man, I had a good question right in mind and I lost it. But you talk about Mike Gundy. It's funny because when you tweeted this out, I noticed that, and so I'm gonna make a projection based on this statement that Kansas State through and through, they're the heart, they're the soul. You're going to root for the Big 12 when they venture out of conference and take on those big bowl games, and you're rooting for the Big 12 to look good. Texas might be in a different category.
Yeah, I'm not sold on Texas fans. I'm not sold on their program. I think it's really, really toxic. I've seen a lot of great coaches go there and just kind of get completely squelched as far as their opinions and their style goes. The fans are overly obnoxious, but I think it's great because KU beat them in football, and I will hold on to that for a really long time. But I think that what Tom Herman's going to be doing down there is a lot of focusing on putting in the heart, putting in the time, putting in the effort, and that's what he's kind of great at. So we're going to see a lot of out of Texas, but I'm not ready for the full-on Texas rebuild quite yet.
So yeah, Texas fans, take this in, that regardless of what you do in the future, and especially if David Beatty, let's say, goes an expected 0-9 this year. Let's say he goes 0-9 in the conference this year and gets fired. He won one game in the Big 12. He's like 1-26, I think, is the record right now.
Yeah.
So let's project that to 1-35. Let's just have a little fun. 1-35. How insanely pathetic is that? And he beat Texas.
Well, I mean, you look at the entire landscape of KU football, and I'm lucky enough to know a couple people that work in that department, and they take building the players from the ground up very seriously. I think you kind of have to when you have not that much to offer win wise. You kind of have to just go to the basics, and they do a lot of community outreach work, and I think that's great. It's just time to kind of let that translate onto the field.
No question about that. So we've got a number of people on the line, and we've got one person in particular, and I'm going to set up this question by stating that the narrative in every conference, because the focus after the head coach is on the quarterback, so people love debating quarterback battles and talking quarterbacks. Then that's amplified in the Big 12 because of the style of offense almost across the conference, excluding Bill Snyder. But then with everybody else chucking the ball all over the field. And then it's exemplified, or amplified, I should say, even more this year, because you've got one established star. Then you've got a lot of question marks all over the conference, and probably no more so than at Oklahoma State, where they typically have a guy in play that's, we've seen Brandon Whedon and, of course, Mason Rudolph in recent years move on to the NFL. But this year, Gracie, it's obviously up for grabs. And how do you handicap that race? And was there anything that Gundy said that might lead us in one direction?
I think that Gundy is a man of mystery in many ways. And I think that it's really going to take finding out who's starting that day of game one. I didn't really hear anything that led me to believe that he's choosing favorites. It's kind of weird though to see so many different quarterback slots open for competition across the Big 12 because we come from, like you said, Mason Rudolph, Baker Mayfield, and there was just outstanding quarterbacks across the board in the Big 12. We're kind of in this shift right now that it's up for grabs. So it kind of makes the Big 12 a little bit more exciting to see who's actually going to be starting these games.
But Gracie, so I mentioned the one big star, and that would be Will Grier, who Dana Hogerson had made a comment that he wasn't typically a coach who would support or buy into Heisman candidacy before a game's been played. But in the case of Will Grier, that he's seen enough and he knows the maturity there, that knows he can handle it. So he's the star, and he's one of the reasons why people are buying into West Virginia. If you look at the personnel top to bottom, you would have to think that Oklahoma is still the class of the league. And when the media voted, when it came down to it, they overwhelmingly selected OU. And of course, Texas is coming on, and Oklahoma State should be decent, but maybe have a step back this year. So are you buying into West Virginia?
Well, seeming how I remember the 2012 season when Dana bought into Geno Smith, and we all know how that worked out. K-State broke him. I remember that game. It was beautiful because Geno was front runner for the Heisman, and Dana bought into him then. I think it's a little bit different. I think he might have learned his lesson with that. Will Grier really seems to be the total package. It's a matter of if West Virginia is going to provide enough weapons for him and provide the pace of play that he needs. I think that he's not as showy of a quarterback, but he's consistent, he's reliant, and he's really strong out of pocket, which I wasn't really expecting. But going back and watching him in a couple different practices that I saw, he's probably the real deal. I can't call Geno Smith on him this time.
Yeah, Geno Smith started 6-0, and I think 6-0 turned into 7-5 pretty quickly, and all those touchdown passes turned into turnovers.
Yes,
when the schedule got a bit tougher down the stretch. We got Gracie Terrell on the line from Sprott's Takes, and you can join her just on Twitter at Go. Did I really do that? At GAT. GAT. It's all caps. It's right there for you, and she can direct you in whatever she's working on, which is SB Nation's Bring On the Cats. That's her writing there. And then we also have, again, the podcast.
Yes, it's Sprott's Takes. And yes, that's spelled correctly. SPROTSTAKES. We cover Kansas City area sports, Big 12 especially, and then national news if there's anything uprising or pop culture mixed with sports. So we try not to take ourselves too seriously. We like to have fun with sports, as they should be.
No question about that. That's a good lesson for all of us. Be passionate. Care about your team. Show some fervor, some fire, but once the game's over, and move on with life, and do it with a smile on your face. And you can take it seriously for 3 or 3.5 hours. I think Gary Patterson made the comment this week that we hate each other for 3 hours, and then we get done, and we're a conference. We're united. We want to do what's best for the conference and make those decisions. Not necessarily down the path that you were taking it, but it made me think of Gary Patterson's comments. And you got to be impressed with TCU. And I had a West Virginia guy on last night who did a great job, but I kind of reminded him as he was discussing Dana Hogerson and this West Virginia program taking 6 or 7 years to acclimate itself to the Big 12, that for TCU, they were coming from a non-Power 5. And it was a transition for a year or two, but they have taken hold as a power in this conference.
They really did, and it's impressive to go back to the Rose Bowl after, it's kind of like their territory for so long. They got right back into the swing of things. As much as Baylor just leaves a bad taste in my mouth, they did a pretty exceptional job getting back into the swing of things when they joined up with us too. So it's just kind of seeing how people really gauge the competitiveness. And I think West Virginia, it's weird that they're so disconnected from the rest of the conference. That's why I was really hoping back when they were talking about expansion to get Cincinnati or Memphis in, just to give them kind of like a stopping point along the way of coming all the way into Texas and deep into Texas. So it'd be nice if we could expand and get some more teams. But right now, I think that we made a lot of money last year in the Big 12. Looks like the schools got a solid payout and things are going well. And that's all you can ask of the conference.
Yeah, because traditionally the SEC and the Big Ten have owned college football from the standpoint of money, rear ends in the seats, TV ratings, and then obviously that all filters into the cash value. But the Big 12 with some very encouraging statistics concerning revenue and per team, per program payout this past season. We got Gracie Terrell on the line from Sprott's Takes talking of the Big 12. Speaking of quarterbacks, Gracie, at Kansas State, you do it a little bit different in regards to what you asked those guys to do. You played 3 guys last year with, let's see, you had Jess Ertz, Alex Delton, Skylar Thompson played quite a bit. So you played 3 guys last year. I believe one of them has moved on. So what does this quarterback situation look like this year?
Alex Delton, Skylar Thompson. It's kind of a race that we've seen before. Jake Waters and Daniel Sams. We had a switcheroo going on. Didn't work. Just FYI, in case anybody was wondering, Daniel Sams ended up transferring to McNeese State because he was complaining he wasn't getting enough time. And I think that was kind of a dig at the guys that have moved on from Snyder's program when he said that the instant gratification world and not having the patience and not believing in the program. If Daniel Sams would have stepped up and been a little bit more patient, who knows what would have happened. But it's always good to see that Snyder is still the same guy when he's like, I don't know who's playing quarterback. I don't know. But he brought both of them to media days. So I'm like, all right, obviously he's preparing them for whichever one decides to, or who's going to start, he decides to start. So he's preparing them both. Both quarterbacks have their strengths. I would just really hope that this season isn't going to turn into what it was a couple of years ago when we were questioning if our wide receiver could come in and play quarterback because we were injured that much. So as long as we have a good, solid backup for our starter, that's honestly all I care about, which sounds really like a minute detail. But yeah, after seeing seasons where we get down to, hey, can Cody Cook start at quarterback? I know he played quarterback in high school. Can we make it happen? That's scary to us. So
yeah, this is what they do at other levels. This should not be done for a team that typically finishes somewhere close to the top 25 that's playing for a possible Big 12 contention that should be worrying about the quarterback position. And let's grab this guy and give him a few reps during the week and
right.
for the Oklahoma State defense or whoever they're playing that week. Yeah, not a good thing.
And it's really like kind of surprising that it's not really a secret. We know that Snyder has something up his sleeve. He has obviously a favor in mind. He's just not saying it. But I'm really hoping that with all the new coaches and all the new coordinators that they kind of step up and implement, a little bit stronger and newer tactics. I know that Snyder said that he has a notebook that's incredibly thick with everything that you could ever know about football in it, with Colin Klein in a little bit more. I think it's going to probably shift to a newer style of play. My biggest concern, and I was called an ageist for saying this, but the average coach's age on our team was like 70 something. And I'm like, oh my gosh, that is ridiculous. So we've got a lot of young guys in as coordinators and co-coordinators for the first time in their career. And I'm just really excited to see what they can do and if they can bring a little bit more life into our incredibly monotonous offense at times.
What's it like to be a Kansas State fan? This is a very unique program. The JUCO route has been relied upon through the years. The recruiting has not been great if you look at the recruiting rankings, and we know that they mean something because if you match the national rankings at the top 5 or 10 versus the recruiting rankings, they tend to fall into play. But here's a guy that's bucked the trend, and he recruits in the 70, 75 range. Maybe he's trying to match his age. I don't know. But they develop guys. They work a system. They play fundamental football. They make it work. And just as I mentioned off the top in ranking Big 12 coaches, I got myself a little bit more familiar with the year to year, which I more than generally knew. But I just wanted to look at it one more time and see. We're looking at a program that historically had the worst or one of the very worst winning percentages in history. Bill Snyder takes over 1 in 10 and then and they're winning 9, 10, 11 games. Then he leaves the program. They go back into the toilet for 3 years. He comes back. They start winning again. And now it's not necessarily where they were about 10 years ago, but it's pretty close. And they're winning their, 8-4, 9-3 type seasons, winning bowl games the last couple of years out. And it's just pretty fascinating. But there has to be a level of frustration, maybe not, because you have won and finished in the top 10 several times under Bill Snyder, but it's never an ultra talented team.
Right, and he does more with less, which sounds bad because we've even had people comment on it in the past. Jesse Ertz today goes, we're not less talented. We just give more, and I guess he kind of took offense saying that Bill Snyder does more with less. But the thing is that these kids play for Bill Snyder in a way that most teenagers don't really relate to, like 70-something year olds. They give something. They also recruit for the type of player. A lot of the times you see these kids, BJ Finney was one of them, just a farm kid that wanted to play football and was, put his heart into it. Now he plays for the Pittsburgh Steelers. He's making an impact as a rookie. I think he was named one of the top rookies in his first season. So just being able to have these guys that give the heart and that really buy into his program are important. I think parents respect Bill Snyder a lot because they've seen what he's built. Players obviously know that he would be historical to play under. The guy even said, I don't see myself stopping coaching anytime soon. I have a great grandson I'd like to coach. Let's just keep in mind the kid's 6. Okay. So he's talking about playing or coaching till he's 91. He doesn't seem like he's going anywhere. And, I was up in Manhattan, Kansas, which is a great place to visit not that long ago. And I was talking to some friends up there, and a lot of people have been worried about, okay, well, if Sean Snyder takes over, is the recruiting and everything's going to stay the same? Are we still going to have the same interest? And it was interesting because I started looking at the stats of Sean Snyder as a special teams kind of savant, you could say, that he really and truly has made an impact on special teams. That a lot of people overlook. There's so many games that were won by special teams, so many times that he has really and truly stepped up, but it was quiet. It's kind of in a Snyder way of movement. They're quiet about things, but I don't think that I should be worried so much anymore about being a fan of K-State because we kind of got rid of the things I was worried about. Dana Dimmel, I don't think he realized that there was anybody else but his son on offense to run in the ball. We had, Glenn Gronkowski, for crying out loud, and he was like a bulldozer, and he didn't even use him as much as he used his son. So I'm glad he's going to go harass the fans of UTEP. Tom Hayes, thank goodness he finally retired. Great coach, but was just kind of holding our defense back. There was not the adjustments we needed. So yeah, 98 and 2012, bad years for K-State fans. But other than that, it's been really impressive to see what Snyder's able to do with this team. And every year consistently, I think that we're going to have like a 7-win year and we end up having 9 wins, which you can't complain about. Nebraska fans would fire you, but we can't complain at K-State.
Hey, Gracie, tracking Big 12 Media Days. And again, a lot of the rhetoric is pretty conservative and pretty cliched, but at the same time, and not just hearing from the players and the coaches, but hearing from the other media and the people that you talk to that cover the Big 12. What are some of the narratives out there? What's the vibe? What are some of the storylines that of where this conference kind of stands right now?
I think the conference as a whole is getting better. We're known for, like you said, our fast style of offense. TCU definitely helps with that, racking up 55 points like it's no big deal. Our defenses need to get back to the historical Big 12 powerhouse defenses, and I think they're getting back there. But overall, the narratives that I heard is that this conference as a whole was pretty solid. Big Ten is famous for having really low scoring games, and they're very impressive because it's a battle out there. With this year, it's going to be interesting to see because of the shift in quarterbacks and shift in so many different teams with losing so many players. K-State is returning a lot of starters, and they had guys that showed a lot of talent that maybe needed a little bit more time last year. So I'm really excited about that. But I really didn't hear much out of Iowa State fans and really didn't hear that much out of Texas Tech fans. I don't know if I have them all muted on Twitter. I have no idea, but I really didn't see the excitement that Oklahoma State, OU, Texas, TCU, K-State, and KU fans had. And of course, Coach Beatty has a lot on his plate to get fans excited about, with college basketball still being king at KU. But it was impressive to see that so many people were excited about tuning into Big 12 Media Days, which is not traditionally a very exciting thing, but I think we're all just so hungry, like I said, for college football to start.
No doubt about that. We've got Gracie Terrell on the line from Sprouts Takes. We've got a question here. If this is a question at all, you can do whatever you want with it. But someone wants you to comment on last year's Texas-Kansas State game.
Do I have to?
That was like a down to the wire game, right?
It was. And it's stressful. Those games are very, very stressful. And sometimes I might like block them out in my mind. But really, you got to see Sam Ellen. There's a sports writer here in town called Sam Mellinger. So I always like Sam Ellinger. There we go. It was really cool to see him play. I'll just say that. I'll say one positive thing about Texas there. And it was great to see the kid kind of bring back that Texas quarterback that was always so powerful. You had the McCoy dynasty for so long, and they really truly dominated the game. But I think that there's a lot that Texas fans have to look forward to. Hopefully they don't win against us this year, and that's really all I can ask for. I like to say that K-State owns Texas and like the entire state. So in order to do that, we gotta beat them too.
No question. No doubt about that. So before we let you go, the Big 12, you kind of alluded to it just a minute ago. When you look at the 5 major conferences, I do believe, based on my observation a couple years ago, it was the worst conference. I don't believe that now. It acquitted itself very well last year. When you just look at wins and losses, that's one thing. But I marched through the standings with a couple of Big 12 guests the other night in regards to how the conference performed in the big bowl games and in all the postseason games and the regular season games against the other conferences. And it was pretty impressive the way the conference stood up against the other 4 last year. So your thoughts about the Big 12 and where it stands in the Power 5?
Yeah, I am going to be going on a radio show on Sunday morning with my Pac-12 guys, so I'm not going to throw them under the bus. But, I think SEC is always going to stay right at the top as long as Nick Saban's still coaching football. And, well, I don't think that's going to slow down anytime soon. He might beat out Bill Snyder to coach till he's 100. I have no idea. But, to see the SEC kind of get it a little bit exposed in the East like they do every single year. A lot of people were all in on Tennessee. I'm not. I don't know. I swear I don't have a prejudice against orange teams, but it's just like the Tennessee fans just get hyped every year. Locally, we have Mizzou, that's in the SEC, and you kind of get to see like the weak points of the SEC there. Obviously, Big Ten's right up there as always. I don't believe in the Big Ten hype. I like to. I'm very biased, obviously. And I like to try to give it like some time, but I'm like, I think Big 12 this year is right up there in the top 5. I'd say probably 4 if you're looking at overall. I don't know how I'd rank the other 4 in the top 5, but I know the SEC would be at the top and the others just kind of like you could easily interchange them easily.
Yeah, I think it's a pretty good debate at this point where the SEC was definitely the dominant conference for about 10 years.
Yeah.
It's a pretty good debate and still has the best talent if you look at the recruiting rankings. And then 4 years later, when they translate to the NFL draft.
And then, I don't know, we have Mississippi State game, 11 a.m.
That's right.
Kickoff. So it's like we played SEC schools. Vanderbilt was 2 years ago. I was at the Auburn K-State game, that Thursday night game. It was pretty intense watching a kicker kind of sort of blow our chances at winning that one. That would have been pretty awesome that year. I'm looking forward to the Mississippi State game because it's going to be a back and forth series for a few years to come. So I think that would be a great non-con to win, obviously. So I think that it shows that K-State is not afraid to take those bigger opponents on non-conference wise. You look at Alabama's schedule. I think they have like Arkansas State and 2 other teams that are just nothing in their non-con. So hopefully that helps in bowl season and kind of boosts our rankings a little bit if we can really put a showing out on Mississippi State. So it's going to be good to see that our level of competition in the Big 12, we're not afraid to play those other opponents.
So that's a good point, Gracie. I didn't mean to cut you off.
Oh, you're fine.
I have not been too pleased with Kansas State's approach to non-conference scheduling typically. So I was glad to see signing that contract with Mississippi State for the home and home. That's going to be an intriguing 2 games back and forth. And a trip out to Stanford a couple of years ago was obviously a good effort out of Kansas State, but too many of those FCS games. I'm not a big fan of some of the conference scheduling or for Kansas State, your team in particular, but seem to be stepping it up here going forward.
Yeah, and I think my ultimate dream matchup, non-con, which will probably not happen anytime soon, would be watching Nebraska and K-State. It would just be so much history and excitement. I know Nebraska misses us. They miss us because the Big Ten doesn't really offer them as much rivalry as the Big 12 did. So it'd be really cool to see that game. Obviously, Scott Frost is going to be really fun to watch this year in general, but I think that would be my dream matchup. Maybe like a matchup to like redo the whole Auburn K-State thing. I don't know. I don't know if I'm ready for that yet, but it'd be cool to see. So I hope that we continue having stronger non-con matchups because in the end, if we win, it just really looks better for our bowl game predictions and our rankings and everything else. So it'd be great to see them continue with that.
All right, good stuff from Gracie Terrell. Sprots Takes. Join her on Twitter at GAT.
Yes.
Gracie, thanks so much for stopping by. It's been a while. Hope everything's well. And I know you're excited for football.
Yes, aren't we all? So thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
And we've got some Oklahoma talk coming up at 2 o'clock Eastern time. So stick around for that on the other live stream. So look out for that. And Gracie, we will see you soon.
Sounds good. Thank you.